Welcome back to the Dream Hub podcast, the space where dreams meet consciousness and the inner world takes center stage. Today, I'm speaking with Alicen Grey, a writer, musician, and metaphysical teacher whose work explores the language of reality itself. Through her method called SymbolSpeak, Alicen helps people interpret life as if it were a living dream, a canvas of symbols designed for awakening and healing. Alicen's journey is one of profound transformation from living with PTSD, OCD, and fibromyalgia to experiencing a series of awakening events that completely recoded her relationship with reality. She now teaches others to recognize synchronicities, symbols, and shadows as invitations to wake up within their own dream life. Her book, Synchronicities, The Signs All Point to You, dives into the mysterious mechanics behind angel numbers, omens, and divine timing. And today we're exploring the art of lucid living and what it truly means to become conscious inside the dream. Alicen, welcome. You have been highly sought after and highly recommended, and I'm very happy to have you here.
I am so happy to be here, and thank you for that luminous introduction. I feel so seen and understood, so thank you.
Great. Well, you are. I love it. So before we explore into your teachings, I hear you say life is a dream, and I was wondering if you could explain what you mean when you say that.
Yeah, so when I say life is a dream, I mean that fairly literally. The same exact practices I used to apply to my dreams at night that would help me become lucid and take control of the events in the dream. Once I started taking those practices and applying them to waking life, I found them just as effective at helping me manifest and become more aware of my inner world. So I came to realize that the same way that you could interpret the symbols in a dream to understand yourself better and to make the kinds of changes that you need to make in your life, you can do that exact same process of dream interpretation on life itself, because everything that manifests around you in your life is manifesting from your subconscious, which speaks the language of symbols. So whereas in a dream at night, the things that manifest from our subconscious appear fairly instantaneously. The thing is, in waking life, things take a little more time to develop. There's a lag or a buffer of time. So most people never clock it, that the things they're seeing around them are manifestations from their inner world, because by the time the thing has manifested, a negative thought they had about money or about romance, by the time it shows up around them, they forgot that they ever had that thought like 3 days ago or a week ago. And so really the practice of lucid living is about becoming so aware of your stream of thoughts, your stream of consciousness, that time itself starts to feel like it's dissolving. So there's no more sense of separation between inner world and outer world. You start to see the simultaneousness of both and realize there really is no distance between them. Lag time, that effect disappears, and you end up sort of living in a stream of constantly saying, oh my God, I was just thinking about that, and look, it just appeared. Or, oh, I was just thinking this, and I heard these song lyrics on the radio, and it's like exactly what I was just thinking. That starts to happen all of the time, the more you cultivate that inner illumination, that lucidity. So that is what I teach people how to do, and that is what I have found incredibly useful in my own life, to treat life as if it is a dream, because I think it really is.
That's so cool. And I reckon a lot of people listening would resonate with the things that you're saying now. And even as you were speaking, I was thinking how interesting it is with that lag that you mentioned, and how even when we have something stressful or traumatic happen in our waking lives, there's a lag of a few days before it shows up in our dreams as well. So it's like going both ways. Yeah, that's
Oh, that's a
cool.
great point. Yeah, absolutely. I've noticed I don't tend to dream of things right away. It might take a hot second, but yeah, yeah, I hear you.
Mm, mm. So before we go into the symbol speak, I wanted to ask you about this awakening that you had happen. I heard that there was a series of events. So would
Mhm.
you like to share what those moments were like? How did they shift your understanding of reality, or what happened there for you?
Yeah, I love this question because the two awakening events that immediately come to mind have the most potential to really offend people. So, in the manifestation world, a common point of protest that you'll come up against is people saying, "Oh, well, are you saying that I manifested this traumatic thing that happened to me? Or are you saying I manifested this natural disaster?" And I'm going to go as far as to say it is possible that there is a relationship between each individual and everything happening in their life, no exceptions. And it's not easy to approach that idea if you're accustomed to shielding yourself from those frightening emotions or the frightening possibility that you are much larger and stranger than you might realize you are, right? So I'll start with the first awakening event. So 2019, I was dating a man I would describe as abusive, verbally abusive, emotionally abusive. A classic situation where it started with love bombing. I thought he was the one. We moved in together, and suddenly his mask fell, and I found that he was an alcoholic and a pathological liar, and all these really awful things. And of course, he was just cruel and had a sadistic streak. And so I'm living with him, isolated from everyone. I had moved to a city where I didn't know anybody. And so I didn't know what to do, where to go. I was so scared of like what my next step in life was going to be to get away from him. And long story short, we had like an on and off thing where I thought maybe he had changed, and maybe I could forgive him. And it was just this whole confusing thing where um, the problem was I had no self-awareness. So I had no idea how I had wound up in this situation. And my childhood stuff that was playing out in this situation, and the ways that I had subconsciously sought out a man with his personality type. So that's a part of it, but that's not even really the hardest part to grasp, like the awakening part. Um, One day we were laying in bed and my head was on his chest, and we were like just about to have a fight. Like things were tense, and they always got that way, and I was just so frustrated, like not this again. So I'm laying there and we're just like awkwardly quiet, like we kind of both don't want the fight. So I'm laying there and I don't know how to explain where this idea even came from, but it was like my first glimmer of awareness that there could be a relationship between my thoughts and reality. As I'm laying there on him, I think to myself, what if I create the feeling of joy in my heart right now? Like joy with no reason, no incentive, just joy. So privately, in my own inner world, I just have this spark of joy in my heart. And at the moment that I do that, he starts laughing out of nowhere. And I was like, "What are you laughing about?" And he's like, "I don't know. I just feel good all of a sudden." And it was horrifying to me because it was like my first little glimpse into how quickly something can manifest from your state of being. But I didn't yet grasp the mechanics of it, of how a thought or a feeling state can then echo out into reality and reflect back to you. But the seed was planted. Once I felt that moment where when I shifted my emotional state, he instantly responded by reflecting that back to me. There was no more denying that there was something there. So, I continued to experiment with manifestation, and another 4 years passed of me really getting deep into this stuff. And so, like most people who are into manifestation, I believed you could manifest on like a personal level, but I arbitrarily drew this line at like world events or like things happening on the grander scale. I was like, okay, there's no way I have anything to do with that, right? But Um, and this is where I risk sounding super crazy to a lot of your listeners, but this is the truth as I know it currently. I could be wrong, but I'm just going to tell you how I perceived it. I was living in Asheville, North Carolina, and this was last year. So I had just moved there. I was trying to like kind of build a whole new life there. And the whole time I was living there, I was so emotionally volatile. I had had some family issues that had compelled me to move. So I was very like in grief and constantly sobbing and like just couldn't couldn't seem to feel nice and peaceful and stable. So I'm constantly like this whirlwind of emotion, and I'm just like every night, just like weeping and crying and screaming at God, like, I don't know what's wrong with my life. Like, and I started telling all of my friends, I feel like a whirlwind. And, um, on top of that, then I started noticing Asheville itself felt like a whirlwind. Like there's something about the culture there where nothing ever feels quite grounded. Like even the most minute details, like when you try to host an event somewhere, trying to get the details sorted is like you're being churned in this like washing machine. Like it's just like nothing's grounded, nothing's stable. The culture is so like all over the place. And then, and I have the video on my Instagram to prove it. One day I noticed, and this was from using my SymbolSpeak process of interpreting your life and all its symbols like a dream. I suddenly realized I had like 5 blenders in my possession. And I made a whole video like marveling about how, for months I'd been describing myself as a whirlwind internally, and then I was describing Asheville itself as a whirlwind, and now I have 5 blenders, and what do they do? But they like create this like cyclone inside themselves. And I was kind of laughing about it. But not long after that, Hurricane Helene happened. And it was this freak historic hurricane, the likes of which had never been seen that far inland. So now we have this city that has never experienced a hurricane, suddenly devastated by it. And we went down to the street level to see what the flooding had done. And it was like being on the set of a disaster movie, except you can't leave. This isn't just a movie, like this is real life. And it was so devastating. I mean, I was displaced by it. I had to move back in with my family, and it was pretty egregious. But the thing about it is when we were in it, like when we were in the aftermath of the flood and all the damage it caused, and we had no power, and we were, trying to ration our food with no refrigeration and all the stuff that goes into like a survival situation. Um, it was more clear to me than ever before in my life that this was not a coincidence. And it was frankly the most offensive idea I had ever considered in my life before, that there could be a relationship between my personal emotional issues, feeling like a whirlwind, and the whole city I lived in then becoming devastated by a freak hurricane. But when I talked to other people who had also survived the hurricane, they said a very similar thing, that this did not feel like a random storm. This felt very personal, very specific, and very precise to their particular situation. And I was hearing that sentiment over and over from other people who went through it. And so it brought me to considering this idea of the collective consciousness and how we are also connected, and the personal is reflected back on the grander scale as well. And there is no arbitrary separation between which things in our life have manifested from within us and which things haven't. Like it's all part of us, each and every one of us. And so when I allowed myself to go there in my mind and really ponder the possibility that even a hurricane could have something to do with my inner world, I felt liberated. And I would say that was the most major like disruption of my foundations. It broke me through that barrier, that last barrier to understanding just how intricately we are woven together with our outer world. And ever since then, I have felt this profound peace, like I'm not a whirlwind on the inside anymore. There's this beautiful sense to everything, that it all makes sense. Yes, everything has to do with my inner world. Everything, no exceptions. And now that I've accepted that, I feel this clarity about my entire life, about everyone I meet also being a part of me. I really feel my oneness with people and with the world in a way unlike ever before. And I think it's one of the hardest leaps to make on the spiritual path, seeing how the big picture is also you. But all I can say is personally, I feel liberated by accepting it. So, yeah.
I love that you feel liberated by it. I think some people would be like freaked out by it, like worried about how their thoughts or their feelings could impact the world. But I guess it is comforting to know that your inner world may have been getting churned up because of this event coming towards you as well. So it's like
Mhm.
what's within you is being projected out, but also what's out is affecting your inner world. So it's like a back and forth kind of a thing.
Totally, yeah. Yeah, because then it brings into question the nature of time. Like, is it that it started in here and then it echoed out from the outer world? Or was it, was the hurricane already written in the future, but the future's overlapping with the past and, time isn't linear like we think it is. So there's so much that's brought into question by events like these. And that's why I consider it an awakening event, because it kind of like shined this extremely bright, extremely uncomfortable light on everything I thought I knew and was taking for granted about how reality works. But, I think about how many cultures have explicit instructions for how to influence the weather, like rain dances and other rituals you can do to bring sunlight or end a drought and things like that. And I think we've long understood how deeply we are enmeshed with the world around us. It's just we have this funny little habit of forgetting our place in the bigger picture. So,
It's so true. It's like we need constant reminders. And I guess that's why things come to us with symbols or synchronicities as well, to just constantly remind us. So let's talk about SymbolSpeak, which is your method of interpreting life symbolically. How did you develop it? And I guess what makes it different from traditional analysis? How would you, I don't know, share examples or help the listeners to be able to use this for themselves?
yeah. Yeah. So, symbol speak, I developed it starting from a place of pain. So I had this, may I curse on your show, by the way?
Yes, yeah, go for
Okay.
it.
So I had this clusterfuck of issues all at the same time in my early 20s. I had fibromyalgia, which was severe enough that I was constantly canceling plans from the flare ups and the pain in my joints and muscles. I was briefly on medications for that. And I also was diagnosed with PTSD by four separate mental health professionals. And I had debilitating, excruciating menstrual cramps. And all of this was happening together, but I didn't figure out for a while that they were related to each other. I just kind of thought I was unlucky and I had all these health issues and, just poor me. So it really unraveled when I started to get these glimmers of awareness that my menstrual cramps were meaningful. Like, I spent a lot of time around second wave feminists who are very big on like preserving the sort of like witchy knowledge of women's health, like, the very esoteric, occulted side of women's health. So, spending time around those kinds of women, I started to entertain the possibility that my womb was conscious and was communicating something to me with these cramps. So, I decided to meditate one day and talk to my womb and ask her, why so much pain? What is this about? You know, why do you torment me? I had this idea that my womb was trying to punish me or something. But then what started coming up was, frankly, traumatic memories from childhood and things that were stored in that part of my body. And I realized that the pain of my menstrual cramps was symbolic of the emotions I hadn't dealt with. And the emotions specifically having to do with sexual trauma, it made sense that my body would store it in the sexual center of my being. And so once I realized that was a symbolic meaning in the pain, I decided to change my approach to my period. And instead of almost like furthering the abuse against myself by like forcing myself to work on my period, forcing myself to pretend I was fine, and telling myself to shut up and be quiet and stop complaining about the pain, which was like what my abusers did to me. I completely shifted my understanding of how to approach my womb and started practicing love instead, and said, okay, when you feel this pain, we're going to rest. I'm just going to spend all day in bed. I'm not forcing you to do anything. Like, I love you. I just want you to feel good. And I started having this like mercy towards myself that I'd never, I don't know, I just hadn't had before. But once I made that switch, the cramps every month that used to put me in bed, they lightened up tremendously. I mean, I still have an intense experience every month, but it's not searing hot, crippling, tormenting pain. It's just this intense inward feeling, like the whole flow of my energy body turns inward, and I'm suddenly sensitive to how it's a time of intuitive receptivity. And so from there, like changing my approach to my period, my fibromyalgia symptoms also disappeared. A lot of women who are diagnosed with fibromyalgia are also survivors of childhood sexual abuse. And so it's actually PTSD, but like coded into the body. It's like your whole body is expressing the trauma, desperately trying to signal for your attention. And so that whole experience taught me that pain is often symbolic. Like where we experience pain, especially if it's chronic pain, tends to signify what exactly the person is not dealing with in their emotional body, in their past. And so, for example, if you're somebody who is constantly lifting other people up, but like not supporting yourself, you might have pain symbolically in your knees. Feel like you can't like move ahead in life because you're carrying such a heavy burden on yourself. Or if you are not you're in your authentic, true expression, you might get like chronic sore throats or lose your voice constantly. And so the body becomes this like symbolic feedback system where it's always letting you know exactly where the problem is by communicating it symbolically through your different body parts. It's just a matter of like learning how to read that symbolically. And so I've started applying that method of interpreting the body like a symbolic sounding board. And that has just streamlined so many healing processes for me, and also for the people who work with me. The kinds of breakthroughs people have when they realize that the pain isn't necessarily just physical and it's not just literal. There's also the metaphorical layer to it. That, like, when people finally get that, it's like a big illumination, like a light bulb moment. And they're like, oh, so the knee pain wasn't about my knees. It was about, this other thing. And so, yeah, that's where that came from for me. That's how I developed the process. And I feel like there was another part of your question that I just got away from, but I forget.
Yeah, that was great. I loved hearing all of that. And, as soon as you were explaining the body parts, I thought in my head, what about knees? And then you go, and knees. And then it's like, oh, you're connected.
Oh, that reminds me of the second part of your question. You asked how it's different from other modalities. So, one thing I emphasize very strongly in how I teach SymbolSpeak is everyone's symbolscape, as I call it. Your personal field of symbols is going to be different from other people's. So, that's why when most people try to access knowledge of symbols, they go to like a symbol textbook that tells them, this is what a sheep means, this is what a cloud means. But my memories and my experiences and everything that go into the making of meaning that I associate with each symbol in my life is going to be so different from people who've lived a different life. And so, like, that example of an interpretation that I just gave of knees is specific to me, but I don't know what it might mean to you. So what I teach people how to do is access their intuition in order to interpret their life symbols for themselves and take a sovereign approach where we don't worry too much about what the symbol is supposed to mean or what some outer authority says it's supposed to mean, because you know yourself, you have that gnosis within you. And I'm really big on activating people's ability to generate gnosis from within themselves so they don't have to rely on an outer authority.
Mm. Yeah, I love that. And that's really helpful as well with dream interpretation. And then would you use the same practice for, say, synchronicities or like waking life symbols that come up?
Yes. Yeah. So in like day-to-day life, I just wrote a whole book about this. Synchronicity is the signs I'll point to you. So it took me years to figure out that the divinely timed moments or coincidences that felt meaningful were coming from inside me, and they weren't like some outer alien mind like orchestrating it all on some grand scale, like, it just like with the natural disaster I referenced earlier, like even these little moments of synchronicity are like angel numbers on the microwave. That's my favorite go-to example. It really all does have to do with your ongoing inner states. And so synchronicities are like an invitation for you to go inward and ask yourself, what state of being was I dwelling on the past few hours, the past few days, and become more and more aware of the thoughts you have from moment to moment. Um, and that's why if you Google like what does 1111 mean, it's just gonna make you more confused because all these people have these different contradictory opinions, and they're all based on their own biases and experiences and beliefs that may not have anything to do with why your subconscious is starting to pick up on that symbol everywhere in your life. So it is super important to give yourself the permission as a sovereign being to say, I notice I'm seeing 1111 whenever I'm thinking of this person. So like, what are my feelings towards this person? What do I think of our relationship, and what do I associate with the number one? And to put that together, that interpretation for yourself on your own terms is, oh my God, it's necessary. It's crucial that you're able to interpret symbols for yourself and not try to grasp for the meaning out there. Because, the reason I say in the title, synchronicities, the signs all point to you, is because synchronicities really are like direct invitations from your own inner world to say, like, hey, like, pull your awareness back in here. Like, this is where the event is actually happening.
Mm. Sometimes you can go through a wave where you feel like you're seeing synchronicities everywhere all the time. And then other times you can just feel a bit disconnected and you feel like you're not getting any signs or symbols coming up. Do you have any tips or suggestions if someone wants to feel reconnected and start experiencing those moments again?
Yeah, it's such a funny paradox that in a way it can be a blessing not to see any synchronicities, because sometimes they can be really dazzling and mesmerizing, and it almost feels like you start to feel wrapped up in like an epic saga of like just following all these signs, and like they're leading you here and there and there, and it's fun and it's entertaining, but there is always that risk of getting too pulled into the illusion. And so sometimes, ironically, sometimes we're the most connected when we're not seeing any synchronicities, because it means we're not really looking out there anymore. Like, we've effectively brought our focus back inward. So all of that is to say, there's nothing wrong with seeing synchronicities or wanting to see them. But I think it's sometimes like a hidden gift not to see them. But I will say my life has become like an ongoing stream of seeing them, experiencing them constantly. Like I really do live in like a 24/7 stream of like, oh, I was just thinking about this person and then they text me, or I was just thinking about a word and then it shows up on like some lyrics on the song, sorry, and then it shows up in like lyrics on the radio. Um, and I credit that to like having gotten into a really solid habit of watching my thoughts, because a lot of people don't even realize what thoughts they're having on a regular basis. Like, um, in fact, I think a lot of people would notice a lot more synchronicities if they were practicing observing their thoughts. And there's a really good reason why thought observation is central to so many esoteric traditions. So many meditations are about just observing the kinds of thoughts that are flowing through your mind, because that really is a gateway to that illumination of being able to see that feedback loop of like a conscious thought and then the subconscious manifestation of it, and that cycle going over and over and over. So
Mm.
I've reached a point where I'm noticing it constantly, but I think I'm only noticing stuff in the outer world because I'm always in here, like making sure I'm thinking good thoughts from moment to moment, because I want to manifest good stuff, you know?
Yeah. So many of my listeners are familiar with the idea of lucid dreaming while asleep. And I have spoken a little bit about lucid living, but I love to hear it from you. And what does being lucid in the dream of life actually look like in practice? So, how would you describe that?
Yeah. Ooh, such a juicy question. I'm not exaggerating when I say I am more or less perpetually perceiving life as a dream. It feels like I've become aware of a realm or level above this one where there's even more conscious awareness, more wakefulness. And here is like just a temporary passing night that I will eventually wake up from. Like it's so everyone I speak to is like a dream character. Everywhere I go is like a dream setting. It never stops. And I mean, I like it. I'm not like freaked out by it or anything. Clearly it's like become my whole platform. I love to tell people like we live inside a dream. This is fun for me. But what I mean when I say that is I essentially see reality, or the reality I can wrap my consciousness around. As far as my awareness goes, there are essentially levels to reality, and they're corresponding to the consciousness states. So, you know how dreams happen in like the theta wave state where your brain waves are super slow, and so you're more receptive, more hypnotizable, more suggestive because you're unconscious. And then, there are degrees of consciousness from there. Like there's like gamma where you're like super conscious. And then there are degrees of consciousness even beyond that and beyond that. And then at the top of it all, I would say, is God consciousness, like the ultimate highest consciousness, the pure awareness that is just I am. And then below dreaming, there are even lower states that you might call death. But there are degrees of death too. And so I've come to see the consciousness experience as just like this spectrum where there's like this ultimate utmost consciousness, and then there's like flatline no consciousness, you're just non-existent. Everything between that is degrees of dreaming. Like, some people are more lucid in the dream, some people are kind of more asleep. So how do I say this without sounding vain? I feel like, well, I'll just compare myself to my old self. I used to be down here, and I feel
Yeah.
like I'm up here now. Yeah, like I used to just be sleepwalking through life, just going through the motions, not really knowing my purpose or that I existed. Like I never really thought about the fact that I'm alive and why I'm alive. And
Yeah.
so, I was just following the life script. And then, I had these awakening events I talked about before, of like realizing that there's a relationship between my states of being and what I experience, what's echoed back to me. And that led me to start pursuing consciousness really willfully and purposefully. Like, I want to know how far consciousness can go. And so, another part of what I'm into, like what I talk about on my platform, is human superpowers, because I do fully believe all of the anecdotes we have historically of people levitating, people doing telekinesis, walking through walls, things like that. I think those states are when you become so conscious and so lucid in the dream that it really is just an illusion to you. And even like this wall is just, it's not real. Like you could just pass right through it. So I'm not there yet, obviously, as you can see, but I've had my share of supernatural experiences that made it very clear to me that this place isn't real in the way that we think real is real. So yeah, so life as a dream just means like we're at a certain level of consciousness that is not all that there is, and there's more above this, and I'm very curious about what's up there. And so I'm like, I guess you could say I'm on the awakening path in that sense.
That's great. Did you notice through this awakening and through healing from your past, where you said you were not as conscious, struggling with PTSD, struggling with abuse and mental health and those sorts of things, versus to where you are now? Have you seen a big shift in your dream life as well as your waking life? Like, I'm assuming that your waking life has improved drastically, but did your dreams change a lot as well?
Yes. Yes. Oh man, I've in the past 2 years, I've had some of the most vivid, epic dreams I've ever had in my life. And I don't have nightmares anymore. That's the big one. Yeah, because with the PTSD, a big part of that is like night terrors, nightmares. And so I mean, I when I was younger, I used to have like the kinds of dreams that would have me wake up in a cold sweat, or I'd have sleep paralysis a lot. But now I know what to do, like, because now when I find myself in a moment of sleep paralysis or in a nightmare situation in a dream, I have that moment of awareness that I have a choice to make. Whereas I never used to know that I had a choice in those moments. And it was just the dream was happening to me, right? But now it's like I take a deep breath and I'm like, just generate the feeling of peace, and I feel peace, and then the sleep paralysis demon like disappears. It just like they evaporate. Same with like nightmares. If I'm in a moment in a dream that is unpleasant, I can just meet it with love and just choose a different experience, and instantaneously it changes. So that's been the biggest change in my dream life.
Yeah, I love that you can have choice. And then I also love just knowing from my experience that moment of realizing that you have choice flows through into your waking life as well and helps you to be able to, make your own decisions rather than just reacting to the world happening to you. It's like, oh, wait, I have a choice in how this goes.
100%. That's been the biggest positive of this spiritual path for me so far is I don't complain like I used to. I think
Mhm.
90% of my life was just complaining about stuff. Like, and now, not that I don't have bad days or times where I'm in a bad mood, but ultimately the complaints don't last long because I know as long as I get the crying out of my system and I just like let it go and then take a deep breath and return to my center and all of that, like eventually like I'll feel better and it
Mm,
always passes. And now I know that. So yeah, there's
mm.
a song by Chevelle. I love that band. Um, one of the songs opens with Pete just screaming, "We should all have hope and look towards the day where a man realizes that the sounds exiting his mouth are mostly complaints and a change occurs." And then the song starts. It's great. I love that song.
That's so good.
Yeah.
Ah, I was curious. I'm sure that dreams did help you with healing. Do
Mhm.
you have a dream that you'd be willing to share?
Of something that healed me?
Hmm.
Oh, I love that question 'cause I've had some good ones. Um, yeah, yeah. The one of the most vivid dreams I've ever had. Someone you interviewed in the past, Lana Sackwell, the
Mhm.
lucid dreaming coach. Yeah, I love her. I've taken a few of her courses and worked with her. So it was from her that I learned that if you have a question, something you're uncertain about, you can ask before bed, like the answer to the question, and then your subconscious can respond while you're in that passive receptive state. So, but then like, accept everything as the right answer, whether you like it or not, whether it makes sense or not. But, so I took that to heart. And maybe like 2 or 3 years ago, 'cause I am also a musician, I was really frustrated because I was putting in all of this work to produce my own music, and I felt like I was doing everything. Like I had to do the marketing and the production and find the gig musicians and, spend all this money. And I was tired and I was sick of doing it alone. And so, I was like, okay, I need bandmates. I need bandmates. But every time I would try to find bandmates locally, it would not work out. And in the most like circusy way, like it was just this comedy of errors of like every time I thought I met a bandmate, like something would go terribly wrong. And I was so exhausted. So finally one night, I, before bed, asked myself, where are my bandmates and what do I have to do to find them? Like, I'm ready. Like, I want to do this music thing, but I can't do it alone. So I went to sleep. And then in the dream, I was in the presence of God and God was speaking to me. It was so epic. It was like everything I saw was this giant projector screen, and God was giving me a presentation on this projector screen. Like there was this like actual virtual immersive presentation happening. So God's walking me through this presentation of the universe and was showing me the mathematics of everything I could perceive. It was like there was this code underneath it all. I know that sounds very matrixy, but God was showing me like the numbers behind reality and how everything is made of numbers and all this sacred geometry and these sacred mathematical formulas. And so then it was magnificent and I'm in awe. And then God says to me, basically, I am the master mathematician behind this entire universe. My math is never wrong. It never fails. I have made it so that in every possible timeline, you meet your bandmates. And then God showed me how in the dream, it was revealed that I am a number 7 and my bandmates are number 3s. And my 7 adds up with their 3 to make a 10, which is a 1. And the 1 is like new beginnings and fresh ideas and creativity, like that Aries energy. And God was saying, the math is it's going to happen. Like I've coded it into the fabric of reality that you will meet your bandmates. Do you not trust my math? And then I woke up and I was like, oh, like I just got lectured by like the big guy, you know? So ever since then I just like stopped really seeking bandmates. But I mean, like years have passed since that dream, and literally a month ago, I finally met the person who I know in my soul I'm making music with for the rest of my life. And, you know, all the numbers, like the math was mathing, so to speak, when I did like the numerology of our names and stuff like that. And it was like, oh, wow, like God wasn't kidding. Like the numbers don't fail. So, so that was very healing, I guess. Like, I don't think I would have even been open to like I think if I had been grasping and searching like in that past mindset, I don't think things would have lined up the way they did with this person, and we wouldn't be sharing the beautiful music making experience we're having now. So yeah.
That's great. What a relief. Yeah, I know like when you're grasping onto something like that and searching, it can almost turn you off doing the project that you're doing because it just feels so overwhelming, and you've had so many bad experiences, that it's a beautiful dream because it got you just to sit back and relax and probably put you in more of a flow state, able to make more music on your own and just wait for the right timing. That's so cool.
Yeah, gotta love that flow state. It's it's that I am consciousness of like there's nothing to become, there's nothing to try for. Like you just are everything you need to be. And if you can like relax into that, then so much
Mm.
magic happen. Yeah.
It also really connects well with the topics that we started talking about, which was the manifesting, and the state that you're in is what you're going to attract. And so I guess repeatedly being like, oh no, everything's going wrong. It's always going wrong. Why can't it work? It would have just kept bringing, mishaps. Whereas you sitting back and going, I know it's going to happen when the time is right. Well, then that's what you got.
Yeah. Yeah. And time, right? Like it feels so aggravating when you're in it, like, oh, when I'm gonna manifest. But like paradoxically, the more in the moment you are from moment to moment, the quicker things seem to go by. Like it's in our trying not to experience time and trying to rush through it that resistance causes a friction that actually slows things down. Like
Mm.
I liken it to a Chinese finger trap. I think that's what they're called. Have you ever played with one
Yes.
of those things? Yeah, it's like the more you pull against it, the more it traps you. And like then when you just bring everything together and relax, like it lets you go. And so I find that that's how I deal with time these days. My Saturn return taught me that so brutally, but that lesson was necessary. Like, be in the moment. Every time you are frustrated with how long something is taking, practice being just in this one eternal moment, and then the time will just fly by.
Yeah. Yeah. I know what you mean. That's great. So before we close off the episode, I would love to just open the floor for you to share anything that you feel compelled to share right now, like whatever is coming to your heart and your mind that you want people to know about. Let us hear it.
Okay. Oh, this is so special, this open space for sharing. Hmm. Well, recently I've learned the lesson that it's true what everyone says, that when you stop looking for love, it finally happens for you. So, so guess how I know that? I, was fighting time for so long, wondering when is it going to happen for me? And it was only when, and this is another thing I have documentation of on my Instagram. I posted the moment that I finally accepted being single and loving myself. Like I like made a big announcement that I finally loved myself. And like not a few days later, the love of my life entered my life, but he was already in my life for years. And it was like I didn't see him that whole time. And so, I'm learning some really big lessons about the paradox of accepting where you are in order to change things instead of just rushing ahead and trying to change things. Like it's really important to understand where you're at right now. And I think that's a big part of the symbol interpretation methodology that I teach. Like, yes, we want to just go ahead and like just get the thing we're trying to manifest, but where we're at right now is it's enough. There is already so much love and so much bliss to be experienced right here and now. And if you practice perceiving things as perfect as they are, right, not trying to change things, not struggling against things, not striving, not resisting, just being the I am in the present moment, paradoxically, that's when everything changes because you realize it's perfect as it is. And that's been my biggest life lesson lately. And it feels like all I can think about lately is like how elevated I feel ever since I just relaxed into the love that already is. And so I don't know who needs to hear that, but I hope that helps somebody who's listening.
That was so beautiful. And it's so true. And like a lot of the things that you've been saying today, I personally resonate with so much. And so I loved having you on here. Thank you to the listeners who wrote to me telling me to get Alicen on.
Thank
And
you. Yeah.
yeah, so shout out to Tim and Kelly. Thanks for listening and
Oh,
being a
both of
part of
them.
it. Yeah.
I love them both. Hey, guys.
This has been an amazing episode, Alicen. I've absolutely loved speaking with you about this, and I'm sure that the listeners have loved listening to it as well. I don't know. I just feel like we're not done yet. I want to ask one more question before you go.
Yeah, ready.
Okay, so for those who are new to the idea of lucid living, because a lot of the people listening are really into their dreams and their sleep
Yeah.
dreams and getting lucid in their dreams. And I, myself and Lana, we do speak about lucid living, but I think after hearing your episode today, it's really going to sink into them more about what it actually means. So, for those who are new to the idea of lucid living, what's a small daily practice that could help them start waking up within their own life?
Mm, I love that question. One way that I describe the way that symbols highlight themselves in the dream of life is when you get that feeling of something in your life being like a movie moment or like something out of a novel. Like sometimes we'll have synchronicities that are so blatantly cliche and corny that it's like out of a bad script or something. Like I don't know what's a good example. Okay, like for example, if someone is like just they're this ball of rage, they're really just frustrated about something in their life, and then as they're driving to work, their car breaks down. And it's like it's so cliche. It's like, oh, of course my car would break down. It's in those moments that seem like ridiculous. Those are the moments you should be pointing your symbol interpreting lens at your life and look at, this thing that seems like a corny coincidence. It's actually so rich with meaning. So rich with meaning. I mean, there are no meaningless coincidences. It's all deeply interconnected and relevant. And just the very fact that your mind chose to notice something is in itself evidence that it's meaningful because I'm sure we've all experienced the phenomenon of two people, we're in the same room with someone else and we'll notice something that seems really outstanding and hard to miss, but then the person right next to us was in a totally different world noticing something else, right? Like it's because our subconscious mind is it goes through these ebbs and flows of like greater awareness and then like sleeping again and like so we undulate like that. And so in those peak moments where like we're just starting to wake up, that's when the synchronicities occur. That's when we start to notice like, okay, there's a relationship between inner and outer. And so it's those moments of like corny, ridiculous, out of a bad script life moments that like that's actually like unexpectedly that is exactly the moment we should start practicing interpreting life symbolically. So I learned this from that same abusive relationship I mentioned earlier. One day we were having a fight and I was basically like begging this man to be nice to me because he just was constantly putting me down and criticizing me and seemed to take great joy in cutting me down and putting out my light. And so we're sitting there on the couch and I'm just like trying to logic my way into helping him understand why he should be nice to me if he says that he loves me. And it was ridiculous. But, I had no self-awareness at the time. But as I'm sitting there crying and like trying to make this man like, feel for me, I guess, behind me in the bathroom, the sewage pipe that was like running from the floor to the ceiling to the floor started threatening to erupt. And like it was so, I mean, literally a pipe full of shit was like threatening to burst as I'm having this like raw emotional outburst. And I had that flickering awareness of like, oh, of course the pipe would almost burst right now, right? But that was my invitation to look at how this pipe in this dream of life was a symbol of my own inner state and all the shit that I was repressing that was like gonna come out and I couldn't ignore it anymore. Like, I had found my way into this abusive relationship because of all this undealt with shit that I wasn't looking at. And now it was gonna explode and erupt and my life was gonna fall apart. And so I feel like everyone who's listening is probably gonna have a moment they can think of like one of those, like, when that subconscious like is trying to break through and become conscious, it'll feel exactly like that, like something out of a movie. And yeah, I just encourage your listeners to look out for those moments or like notice them and dare to give them meaning. Because yeah, they are meaningful.
I was expecting you to say that you're like ready for a shitstorm.
Yeah, it was a shitstorm. Yeah, when it did burst.
And I guess in those moments, it's hard not to just be straight out frustrated by the inconvenience that's being caused. But really, I think it's also a solid reminder that what we are creating within is going to be reflected out within life. So it's that reminder then, like you were saying before, is that you can choose what state you're feeling and, being able to sort of picture what does joy feel like and sit there and feel joy and see, how the symbols might start changing throughout your waking life. And also, I guess in that moment as well, like if you were in a dream, if that was a dream, well, like you would say, life is a dream. Okay, it's a dream, but let's say it's a sleeping dream. You're asleep and that's a dream, right, and you were lucid in the dream. Like, what choices would you make? Would you have made a different choice in that moment if it was a dream? And I guess that's something as well for listeners to think about, like in those moments of pure frustration or something weird happens. It's like, is there a different choice that you could be making right now?
Yeah. Oh, I love that question because I've never thought of it that way. But I think for the example I gave of somebody being mad and then their car breaking down and they're already mad, but now there's this like, choice point. Am I gonna keep getting more mad, or am I gonna pause, take a deep breath, and talk to myself like, all right, what's really going on? What can we do about this? Personally in my situation with the pipe, if because it didn't explode, but like, the relationship did fall apart and it needed to. But in that moment, if I could replay it and make a different choice in the dream, I think I would have paused and asked myself, why am I begging someone for the most basic decency in a relationship? I think I would have asked myself, like, why am I trying so hard to make someone else appreciate me? Because really the problem is I didn't have the self-worth I needed to walk away from the relationship. And he was just mirroring back my own lack of self-love. And, I needed that mirror. That doesn't excuse any abusive behavior, but I no longer look at him as like a perpetrator in my life, more as like a messenger of something within myself, a message I was ignoring inside. And then the pipe was a messenger as well. And like, again, it all points inward. So yeah, that would be my answer to your question. And this reminds me that in my book, all about like what to do with synchronicities, I do emphasize that it's important to be consistent about your emotional states, because if you are like flickering in and out of consciousness where you might practice mindfulness of your thoughts for like 5 minutes a day, but then you go back to your old habits of thinking, you might see a positive synchronicity, but then a negative one, and then a positive one and a negative one. It goes back and forth and back and forth, and then you're just even more entangled and confused. And so it's really important to, constantly remind yourself that it all has to do with you. Everything starts with your emotional inner states, and the outer world is just an incessant mirror you can't escape from. And you should be aiming to build the kind of life or experience of your life that you don't want to escape from anyway, because because I have my bad days, but even now I'm still kind of entertained by it. Like, even on my bad days, it's like, well, it's a dream, and like I can still find the like mystical, cool, symbolic meaning to it and not take it too seriously, like I may have in the past. So I've learned how to have fun with the dream, even when it's not objectively a fun experience. It's like, I guess there's always that awareness in the background of like, well, this is just one layer of reality, and there's so much more that I could be pointing my focus at. And it's temporary, it all passes by eventually. So
yeah, I love that. And that these symbols are sort of highlighting the areas that we've been blind to, and so therefore helping you to awaken by shining the light on what we need to be looking at and possibly changing. I love that. Thank you so much.
Ew, this was so fun. I'm really glad to have been on here, and I hope that this was medicinal for your listeners.
I really think it was. And if not, it was for me anyway. Beautiful reminders. So what I love about your work is that it bridges mysticism, but also personal accountability. So reminding us that awakening isn't about escaping reality, but it's about fully embodying it. And to our listeners, if this conversation has sparked something in you, please look up Alicen's work at www Alicen, spelled Alicen-Grey, Grey.com. I will put a link in the show notes for you. And check out her book, Synchronicities, The Signs All Point to You. It's on Amazon. And definitely follow her on Instagram and TikTok. She's a great creator at alicen.grey. Thank you for coming on, Alicen. And for our listeners, remember, dreams don't end when we open our eyes. They continue through with the patterns, the people, and the poetry of everyday life. So stay curious, stay conscious, and keep dreaming even when you're awake.